Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
We are sharing stories from the Agricultural Consultancy in East Africa, work of volunteers with LCMS International Mission, short-term missionaries, and fascinating stories. Love sharing this. Joining us. What's that?
They're so good. So good.
Joining us by phone, Delano and Linda Meyers, volunteers, short-term missionaries with LCMS International Mission, serving with the Agricultural Consultancy. Linda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
And Delano, thank you so much for being our guest.
You're most welcome.
Tell us, and you two can figure out who gets to answer this question out of the two of you. Tell us about your interest and experience in agricultural consultancy, and then we'll get into how this became part of your lives, how you became short-term missionaries on this. But what's your background with agricultural consultancy?
Linda and I farmed in Minnesota for 22 years. When our children were going off to university, then we volunteered, or we put in an application at LCMS, and they offered us a position in northern Ghana. That was in 1994. And that was a full-time position, not volunteered, but full-time. So we worked full-time then for those 16 years until 2010 when we retired. And then we, after that, offered to go as volunteers.
And during the full time, we also served Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea as agricultural missionaries.
Wow, that is a long legacy of working in agriculture with a different culture. What was that like? I need to know. What was it like going from Minnesota to Ghana?
It was a steep learning curve. I used to feed cattle through the winter here and do feral pigs. So I remember that first fall in November in northern Ghana, the locals were all freezing, and I went out in my shorts to check the low. I think the lowest temperature was 50 degrees Fahrenheit. and plus in the, working with the culture and getting to know people and watching how they relate with each other and do their work daily, it was really a lot to learn. And then being a Minnesota farmer, we have these deep, good, rich soils, and then getting into tropical agriculture where it's really, more weathered, high temperatures, higher acidity. There was just lots and lots of things to learn. But we connected with a lot of good people along the way, too, to help us. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of things. If I'm not a farmer, so there's things that I don't think about, like soil acidity. I never would have even thought about that. In your time, the long time that you had serving in Africa, what were some of the things that you were able to learn and grow and kind of apply as you moved along to really to help this really expand?
Well. To learn what motivates people there and learn some of the things and fears that they have in their culture. They've come out of an animist society where they were worried. They believe there's a creator God, but they do not know that that creator God sent Jesus Christ. And they spend their lives in fear of that creator God dying, and when the fear of the creator God, lest they die. Mm-hmm. And they will be doing different things to satisfy that God. And if they want to get something done, they go to witch doctors and juju, stuff like that. And they also have fear of angry ancestors because they believe when they die, the ancestors are still watching them and can still jinx them or cause evil to happen to them if they displease the ancestors. So then when you're bringing in new ideas, part of that filter that they have is, well, has this been done before? If I try it, what will happen? Mm-hmm. So therefore, we always bring in Jesus Christ and the confidence we have in Him. We don't fear any other spirits, and we do not fear angry ancestors.
Wow.
Where were you given opportunities to, I guess, who were the partners that you had the opportunity to serve with? Whether it was in your long-term mission work or serving as volunteers in short-term mission?
Well, we've always served with Lutheran Church Missouri Synod as We've been members of that church our whole life, and our supporters in the States have been congregations and individuals of LCMS. And then in Africa, we served together with, in Ghana, it was the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Ghana, and working closely with their leaders and being hosted by their congregations when we would do our teaching. And then when we were agricultural missionaries living in Sierra Leone, we also served Liberia and Guinea. And each one of those countries has had LCMS missionaries in the past, and there is a Lutheran Church in each of those. So we're always working with the church in the country that we were living in. Then we retired in 2010, and we knew at that time already that the East Africa director of LCMS was inviting us to come as short-term missionaries in the future. So since I think, and we started in 2011 with the first volunteer trip, which maybe was about 6 weeks, and in the Minnesota winter we left and enjoyed the nice climates in East Africa, and it was very interesting to get to know that side of the continent too. So we worked together under the director there and with the Lutheran Church in the countries of Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and more recently Malawi. And each one of those, we are hosted by the Lutheran Church. They provide an interpreter for us and guide us around and introduce us, and they're very hospitable. Africa's very friendly for Americans, and especially when we're fellow Lutherans working with the Lutheran Church there.
Share a story with us about why this is such important work to be done on the mission field.
When we look at and have gotten to know African families, without Jesus Christ, a family is really a different structure than when we think of a nice core Christian family where Jesus Christ is at the center of that family and both husband and wife and children come together to serve our Lord. Imagine an animist, one who believes in spirits, is doing juju and voodoo, which I put over on Satan's side of the economy, and I say, and they then, if they're getting a good crop, for example, often the wealth goes into the husband's pocket, and often he will drink it up or spend it in other worse ways. So helping people move up in life and having a better relationship with each other is kind of paramount because Christ is at the center. And when that happens, better things start to happen.
Mm-hmm. What impact did you see from maybe first working with a community or a congregation to after you started teaching them and sharing the gospel with them?
Well, Linda and I learned some different teaching techniques from others that have been there before, using lots of pictures and things like that. So we went as learners, and I think that's always the key in all of these mission endeavors. Do not go like you're some hot dog out of the USA with all the answers. Go as someone who's willing to learn about the people there. Love them because Jesus loved them. Mm-hmm. And then as you're listening and learning, then start bringing them to understand about Christ. And so when we're teaching those different things, then people that start to handle these things better. I've had different folks say, well, as Linda and I would teach together, because I would treat my wife with a lot of respect, they would notice that. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys have said, my wife said, did you notice how the white people talk to each other? Mm-hmm. And so that kind of thing, giving credibility to a wife and giving credibility to our wives in other places and working together as a team under the relationship of the Christian marital relationships is really one of the first things you do. And then after that happens, then I've had people say, well, my wife started trusting me. I paid her back when she loaned me money. My wife and I are getting along better. When we teach, we also teach about Ephesians 5, husbands, love your wife like Christ loved the church. The other things about, following Jesus Christ only, putting your confidence and trust in Him. And we help support the church and help the church leaders to get that message across.
And in regard to agricultural subjects, we try to encourage people to try new things on their farms. They have problems with running out of their staple food, which is corn, or they call it maize. Mm-hmm. And that's almost everywhere. They say that. And so we help. We're kind of a facilitator to draw some solutions from them, so they can be thinking of, well, how could I get a better crop, or what can I do to help the soil become more fertile? And usually it involves mixing the crop residue into the soil and not burning any of that in their methods of farming, that was very prevalent. In East Africa, it's not quite as bad as it was in West Africa, that you always see the fields burning when they were getting ready for their planting season. So people that have tried those things, and we ask them when we go back, they say that they did get a better crop because they didn't burn their farm, or they got a better crop because they used some animal manure, mm-hmm. or they were able to sell their products at a better time when they actually waited till the price went up, because it's very common just at harvest sell a lot then. Mm-hmm. Of course, the price is the lowest then. Mm-hmm. So Delano teaches quite a bit about being wise in your marketing.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you've learned a lot along the way while teaching and serving as volunteers as well. Thank you so much for sharing these great stories, and thank you for your work with the Agricultural Consultancy in East Africa. Delano and Linda Meyers, thanks for being our guest on the Coffee Hour.
You're most welcome.
It's been our pleasure.
Yep. Bye-bye.
I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.